Hello and welcome to another KitPlus TV show brought to you with the support of Mediaproxy. Continuing with our theme for the end of 2020, we've been asking a few experts what they've experienced in the year and maybe what might be on the horizon.
One of the industry's biggest distribution companies, with arguably one of the widest range of products in their stable, is Global Distribution, from cameras, batteries, cables and associated support through to streaming, delivery and storage systems, direct connect, cloud and archive.
So we're pleased to welcome Richard Warburton from Global Distribution to have a chat about what he's witnessed this year. Hello, welcome to the show, Richard.
Hi guys, pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's nice to have you. So before we get into specifics, dare I ask, how has 2020 been for you guys?
It's been a very interesting year. Obviously for many reasons. The impact of COVID, obviously on the media and entertainment, has been pretty significant. So certainly as the pandemic kind of started in earnest, actually back in January when obviously issues started to arise in the Far East, obviously supply chain problems started to materialise, and that kind of had a knock-on effect, through the following kind of quarter really, as then the pandemic hit us locally, obviously shutting down productions, locking down facilities, making everyone work remotely from home. So obviously that posed its challenges to the industry really. Obviously a lot of the typical kind of high street retailers that we work with in the photo industry, a lot of the kind of typical pro video resellers, their customers stopped working, their shops had to close, everyone was remote. But we had a big spike in new demand and new requirements from customers, end customers, and that was really the challenges of working from home. So actually through March, we saw a significant increase in that direct attached storage market. Brands like G-Tech, for example, that we work with, the bigger systems, bigger RAID units, a lot of people buying them to take use on home. There's been a big migration to the cloud as well. Some of the storage manufacturers and collaborative partners we work with, people like Tiger Technology, for example, a lot of remote synchronizations, their on-prem boxes being upgraded with new software licenses to do remote synchronization back to local people's workstations, kind of like not Dropbox, it's an all integrated system, but it's that localized replication. But a lot of people fundamentally don't have decent internet connections in and out of their homes. This is something that businesses have not ever kind of had a contingency for really. A lot of that direct attached professional storage solutions going into people's homes so that they can have data couriered over to them, sent back to them. People obviously can just shuffle media around and carry on working. So there was a big increase in that. And that was a lot of the sort of post-production VFX that was actually in progress, production that had already been shot, filmed, and it was in that post-process. That was now being continued off at home. So it was really the actual acquisition side of the market that stopped. And obviously throughout the rest of the next few months of the pandemic, that obviously had a knock-on effect to what post people had to deal with. I think we've seen a big shift in the type of kit that acquisition has been using. We saw a lot of success in sort of smaller independent production companies, that sort of one-man bands, owner-operators, people that could work socially distanced on their own. They've got their camera, people that had editing skills, color grading skills, that were able to offer sort of an end-to-end solution for businesses. Because you might look at it that, the pandemic shut a lot of production down. But actually opened the doors for new types of production. A lot of businesses that suddenly found that their normal point of outlet and way of communicating with customers was halted, that they had to find a new way to engage with their customers. So, they were reaching out to media professionals, content creators, etc., to facilitate their requirement to suddenly up their game in their web content, to deliver new marketing messages, to make people aware they were still around. Or people launching new businesses. There's a lot of, I've read some articles about some local businesses to us that, kind of around the area where I grew up, there people that worked in London suddenly couldn't get to the office, they were furloughed. They now make masks and they designed sort of, they saw an opportunity to do something new, help things out and create a bit of a local industry. So, all these types of people then need marketing material and they need, sort of content. That's worked quite well. Brands in the industry that we work with, such as Atomus, they ran some very strong promotions to help that kind of smaller independent market. The camera manufacturers have, coincidentally had a lot of significant launches in that kind of low end and mid range. So people like Sony with their new A7S III, obviously Panasonic like their S5 and their VGH1 and those kind of Fox cameras. Obviously Red have launched the Komodo more recently. It's now available as well. Canon with their C70 and there's lots of other mirrorless cameras from Fuji and Olympus that have come out. And all of these are very affordable cameras. So that kind of hobbyist enthusiast and professional that wants to do good quality content on a budget has actually had the ability to do that. So it's been a challenging year for everyone, but there has been some very strong technology coming out that's really helped people kind of get through that. And obviously new opportunities have come about for content producers.
Yeah, so clearly there's been still quite a lot going on. Now, with the exception of KitPlus show in February that we just squeezed in as if we knew, that we managed to just get in before lockdown at V1. All of the trade shows been put on hold. We haven't seen each other. We haven't got together, which we normally would. So it's been difficult to see how your product ranges have developed. What have you been doing? Is there anywhere we should be looking to keep an eye on what you've been up to and what's going on with your kit?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting topic that we've been discussing with a lot of our vendors recently as well, and with some of our partners, because not only did we do a lot of the major trade shows and events, such as your road shows and IPC and Photography Show and all those kind of things, Mediaproxy Show, etc. There's been a kind of we did a lot of open days and seminars at our dealers around certain technology or products and educational events. So we've been doing some sort of webinar series. Some of them have been end user focused. Some of them have been sort of reseller focused. That's something that really we're kind of going to be embracing a lot more of going forward. We now use the platform Brighttalk. So that's kind of for anyone that's not familiar with it, it's sort of a professional YouTube aimed at sort of webinar content across all industries. So it's it's corporate, it's education, it's anything you want to be. And we've actually found that we've reached quite a wide audience with that. We've done various seminars on sort of cloud-based storage solutions, collaboration. We've done some stuff in sort of streaming. Streaming is obviously a big part of what we've had success with this year from brands like Roland and Mediaproxy. Where people have wanted solutions that are very ergonomic, very easy to use, and user intuitive for people that typically wouldn't do streaming. So that kind of Brighttalk platform has been quite successful for us this year. We've had a lot of people come to us from unusual sectors and verticals that have watched content we've put out there and said, well, actually, I've got a question. I want to roll out. I now need to interface with some of my other departments, some of my affiliate businesses and geolocations, and therefore, what technology can I get to do that? So that's been good, and we've done some virtual events as well. One of which being the Photography Show in September. Obviously, that was originally in March, and it was literally cancelled. A week before lockdown came in. Otherwise, it was at the point where we were literally starting to build the stand on site. That day that it got pulled. So they rescheduled for September, and because of how things went, they went virtual with that, and that was interesting. It was the first kind of big virtual show we've done. They had many tens of thousands of people log on, and they're redoing that in March next year. My view is I think big scale events may not be the same again. I think there's going to be an adaptation how people market. I think the use of e-marketing is massively evolved in the last few months, as a lot of other things within our industry have evolved. What naturally would have happened in the next 3 to 5 years, I think, with the way we collaborate and the way we work remotely, has just been expedited. It's just all happened much quicker as a necessity. And I think trade shows will adapt in the same way. I think events like your road shows will become stronger and more relevant because they're a lower cost, more accessible. There's less commitment to people in terms of travel and other expenses to get to them because they're very regionalised. We're seeing that trend with some of our sort of mainland Europe sort of customer bases as well, and also in the US. That kind of move to more localised events, I think, is going to be key. But that integrated online engagement, I think, will just become continually stronger over the coming months and years. The main thing that I miss from the big shows and shows like yours is that obviously face to face is something that you can never replicate that.
Can't replace it.
And it's really a case of the networking side of it. It's the conversations that happen in the bar, or as you go in, or as you go out, or the people you bump into. Less than the specific seminars and the actual product demos. It's about all the conversations that happen on the side, and that's the important part of the industry, in my opinion. I think that suffered because of COVID.
I mean, I think it's interesting, Richard, where you touch upon the advances in technology in such a short period of time, which would have historically taken years to actually develop. So on that basis, can you sort of offer any general predictions of how you see next year going? Do you think technology is going to carry on this exponential curve, or do you think it's going to...
Yeah, I think definitely. Certainly on sort of the acquisition side, you look at cameras like Red's new Komodo, the actual use case of that, designed as a crash camera originally for Netflix, but, it's a Red camera at a price point that is massively affordable. It's in the same kind of price point as your FX6s and your C70s. So it's a completely new net customer base for Red, as well as a B and a C camera for their typical users. But the way that you use that camera, and very similar with what Panasonic have done with their VGH1 and what other camera manufacturers are moving to, that remote control, that kind of streaming to your phone. So, what Atomos are doing with the Ninja 5. The Ninja 5 is a 2-year-old product. It's been shipping for a couple of years now, but if anything, it's kind of, in my opinion, not even reached its peak. The amount of cameras that they're providing interoperability with RAW over HDMI is exponentially growing at the moment. So you're getting 12-bit RAW recording from just a wealth of very affordable cameras. They've got camera control now with Z-Cam on there, and I think that sort of technology is going to come on. And there's some really neat features that Atomos, I know, are going to be coming with over the next year that just further enables people in that acquisition market to work faster and smarter, in smaller teams, more independently, or if you are working in bigger teams, just that interaction of content, that interaction of the material and the data that you're working on, who gets that is going to be growing. Products like the Simply Workspace that we've launched this year as well, that we're seeing a big take up on now, because again, people working on more modest budgets, having to achieve more with smaller budgets and smaller teams, want to work collaboratively. So rather than buying direct attached storage for a whole bunch of workstations, they're buying one, can sit in a little bit cart, can sit on set, can sit in a little studio, can sit in a hotel room, multiple editors just plugging in over Thunderbolt, adapters, that kind of tech is now very affordable and very fast. You can be editing, Red Code RAW, ProRes RAW, ProRes DNX off those boxes, really very easily. And then particularly on the higher end, we've been doing a lot on infrastructure with brands like StrongLink and Cumulo, as well as Tiger that I mentioned earlier. Cumulo, for example, they have a truly modern file system. So where people would be looking at, very, very large NAS, scale-out NAS systems or things like Isilon, etc., it's a very modern replacement for that. But it's the same file system whether you deploy it on physical tin in your facility or whether you actually just spin it up and deploy it in the cloud. And the benefit that things like Cumulo have is, if you take a post house, for example, you can have your installation on site in your facility, but you can also have a cloud deployment or just move to a completely cloud-based deployment. And you can turn things on and off on demand. So if you suddenly go, I need another, 500 terabytes and expand my file system, and then, with what cloud computing you're using, you need more virtual workstations, etc., because you're moving all your workstations to the cloud as well. Is, you can just turn that stuff on for the period that you need it, and then turn it off when you finish. So you kind of start to move to that very OPEX-based way of working and project-based way of working, rather than constantly thinking about that capital investment or finance investment on this is what I need to do and spending the money or committing the money to it. It allows you to be much more dynamic based on the work that you as a company have got coming in from your clients.
It's interesting, exactly where my mind was going when you're saying, if the technology is going to continue to ramp up at a massive pace, CapEx, buying hardware. Okay, the Ninja 5, it's been out for a couple of years and it doesn't really seem like it's end of life anytime soon, but it's continued to develop with firmware updates and software updates, etc. As far as people who, at the moment, companies that got to look at their money a bit, they've got to keep an eye on it. They've had a tough year. investment in what? I mean, that's the question. And as you say, something that they can dip in and out of. And again, are there any particular things that we should look at that will be, if you like, firmware and software upgrades throughout the year?
Yeah, I think that's it.
Yeah.
I think, even with some of the new cameras launched, there's going to be a lot more firmware, a lot more features, functionality, improvements. I think all manufacturers across the industry, so our brands and, a lot of the affiliates that we have interoperability with, everyone's really listening to users much more closely, I think, at the moment. And I hope that continues because of this. That, it's about adapting to the way that people have to work, but also the way that people kind of want to work. It's Tiger technology again. They have done this cloud-based deployment. They've done cloud synchronization for local workstations. You've got your on-prem storage as well. You can tier data out with the archiving systems we do. It's much more about moving data from where you have it to where you need it or where you want it or where your users are going to get access to it. I think there's some interesting stuff coming out for on-set workflows for that. There's some interesting developments going on in software to allow, more ease and collaboration and flexibility on set and in workflows. But I think, a lot of these manufacturers, much like Cumulo and Tiger that we work with, have moved to a OpEx model if you want it. So rather than buying the software outright, you have a minimum 6-month period that you have to buy your Tiger licensing for your collaborative storage, for your editing, color grading, VFX, whatever you're using it for. But that's it. So you just buy it for the 6 months and you just pay for the 6 months that you use it. You can then extend it, you can turn it off, you can then turn it on again. So it's allowing people that flexibility rather than having to make that commercial decision of, I'm now going to tie up 15 or 20 or 50 grand's worth of my money for the next however many months or years, etc. It gives people that flexibility, which, flexibility is key. Flexibility in working smarter. And, again, that's where, as you mentioned, talking about things like firmware on Ninja 5, Atmos is always looking at, well, what can we add? How can we make things better? Even little things that they added this year, like social media frame guides and, all that kind of stuff, so that people that are shooting content, it's just going to go straight onto Instagram or straight onto Facebook. It's like, is my framing and everything correct for my media deployment? So it's about that quicker turnaround, having to fix things in post less, if you get it right to start with. And, we're very excited about the Atmos Neon. That's going to be a big product for 2021. Obviously, it was announced last year, so it's already been known about for 18 months, but we've just started to ship the 17-inch model, and the 24-inch model is due into us, before Christmas and start shipping as well. That's a truly amazing image quality of a highly affordable monitor. The 17 inches a full HD panel. But it's for kind of focus pullers, for people using, want an accurate monitor to use with a laptop, at home or, on location, things like that. It's brilliant for SDR and HDR. But the 24 inch is going to be a really important product for all types of people. The on-set projects, because it's a brilliant HDR and SDR monitor, as well as a recorder in Atmos' traditional fashion. But for the kind of post and VFX users working remotely now, it's something that they can deploy easily at home on an affordable level that gives them very, very, very serious precision image quality, which is very important now with people not being in the facility all the time. Or, you need those really expensive monitors that are 20, 30 grand, in your primary suites, which are still going to be manned. But for all the other projects, you don't need that. Or if you've got a director or a DOP that isn't physically on set, they're sat at home or they're sat in another office, and someone is live streaming what's coming from set and off the camera to that person to check remotely. Something like the Neon is the perfect tool for those kind of users to have really accurate eyes on to what's going on that they're not physically in front of.
We could talk for hours, I think, Richard. We really could.
We'll have to keep an eye on your Brighttalk.
We could definitely talk for hours. Finally, just to wrap up, Richard, just before we let you go, we've been asking all our guests just to get out of their office for a second and tell us a little bit about them that maybe we don't know, or even the people they work with don't know. What have you got?
Well, I was thinking about this after I had the question raised, and I came up with two things. So I'll give you both because I couldn't decide what to tell you. They're both kind of sporting related. So when I was younger, I did a lot of athletics, and I was a very quick runner. So a little known fact that I actually used to be able to run 100 meters when I was about 14 in about 11 and a half seconds, which actually is pretty quick.
Wow.
And I'm also a black belt.
Pretty quick for it, yeah.
Yeah, black belt in karate and a quick.
Oh, I'd have never had an argument with you if I'd have known that.
Yeah, so.
I don't think we've ever argued, really. Yeah.
No, brilliant. Take the oath that you only use it for support of law and order and self-defense. So, unless you actually attack me, I'm harmless.
Oh, all right. Yeah, that's not going to happen. So we're okay. Brilliant. Well, thanks for watching today, and thanks to Richard for coming on the show. To see all our video interviews and kit reviews, then head over to KitPlus TV, which is brought to you with the support of Mediaproxy, and you can find out more about them at mediaproxy.com. Thanks again.